Can you folks see what I'm screen sharing right now? Excellent. Okay, I think I hit the record button. Angela, can you make sure it's recording too?
Yeah.
Can you say the recording in progress thing? And I don't see
it.
it. All right, cool, folks. Thanks for jumping on. So you're here today to learn about the National Student Exchange Program. My name is Greg Golden with the Dean of Students Office. Also here with me is my colleague, Angela Graham. I'll let them say hi.
Hello, Angela Graham.
And my other colleague, Sarah Gutierrez. I'll let you say hi too, Sarah.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see you all.
Right on. So we're just going to do a quick session today on National Student Exchange for folks. So we'll talk about some of the benefits. We'll talk about how the program works, and we'll try and cover as many details as possible to give you as much information as you need to be able to determine whether or not this is a program that you might like to participate in as a student. So without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pop on and keep talking. So why get involved in NSE? So NSE allows students to do a lot of different things. So some of the common things that we hear from students is, most importantly, National Student Exchange allows you to attend a different American college or university. And while you're on exchange at that other university, you pay University of New Mexico tuition. Any scholarships, any financial aid that you're receiving from the University of New Mexico is applied in the exact same way as if you were a student here at UNM. Only you're not. You're taking classes at the other college, you're attending courses at their university, meeting folks at their university, and so forth. So it's an affordable way for students to study somewhere else while taking advantage of the affordability of the University of New Mexico. Whether you're an in-state or out-of-state student, taking advantage of the opportunity or lottery scholarship would work the exact same way as if you were here on campus, only you're not, right? And if you're an out-of-state student, tuition waivers and so forth will work in the exact same way that they do if you are an out-of-state student. So whatever financial aid package and award lured you to UNM will still be available for you to be able to pursue this exchange. Other things, it allows you to meet new people. We hear from students sometimes that it's a way to prospect graduate schools and internships to try and facilitate some connections that might make that a little bit easier. But most common thing that we hear is students who step out of their comfort zone really get a lot of personal growth from doing an exchange program that is researched up and down from different universities, different countries, all over the place, right? So some things about this is NSE for me. We'll say that NSE is a great program if students are willing to be flexible, right? If you're someone who gets a little derailed by change, then sometimes NSE may not be the perfect program for you, just because it does require students to be somewhat flexible. It's great for students that are also willing to put in some effort, because an exchange is not an incredibly difficult thing to pursue and fulfill, but it does require students to be willing to take the initiative to take on some of these tasks by themselves. So we're typically going to be here for some support on the back end, right? But it does require students to take a great deal of ownership in their experience. So it's great for individuals who want to experience something different and don't want to have to pay that big sticker price, right? And it's great for students who listen to a lot of details and are willing to fulfill and follow through on those things. Angela, I'll do this slide and then I'll let you do start on cost of exchange, if that sounds good. So here's the requirements for NSE. In order to be eligible, every campus requires at least a 2.5 GPA. So that means that you have accumulated at least a 2.5 GPA through the University of New Mexico, but you also need to have completed 24 credits by the time that you go on the exchange. So notice that I didn't say 24 credits by the time you apply. It's 24 credits by the time you go on the exchange. So many students are applying as a freshman to go as a sophomore. For example, our application is due here in February, on February 16th. If you're a freshman student, you're applying now to potentially go in your fall or spring of your sophomore year, right? So as long as you got 24 credits by the time you go, then you're eligible. You also have to be in good standing with the University of New Mexico legally. You can't have any outstanding disciplinary cases or financial obligations to our university either. So now Angela's going to talk a little bit about the costs of an exchange, just some things to think about.
So cost of exchange, there's going to be some miscellaneous costs, of course, in anything that you do. And some of those is some universities may require insurance if you're not already covered. There's going to be special course fees depending on which classes you're taking. There may be, if it's a laboratory, you may need, they may charge laboratory fees. Few schools, they will charge students, NSE students included, for I'm your for your they may charge a student a few schools may charge student fees for to help support some of their organizations and things that occur there on campus. There's also going to be application fees, technology fees, travel costs. So we do not, NSE does not pay for travel costs getting to your destination. So that is something that you're going to have to cover yourself as a student. And NSE fees. So there's going to be your application fee and then we'll show you how to look up all of those fees when we do get you situated in into a school. So and this is kind of a reiteration of it. There's special course fees, application fee, technology fees, NSE fees, financial aid. So we use home pay. We're never going to charge you to go to out of state tuition to attend a university with NSE here at UNM. So what you pay here at UNM, your tuition fees will be the same cost that you'll pay when you're out on exchange. All UNM financial aid, your scholarships, they can be utilized for you except work study. While you're on exchange, we'll get into that later. You're not going to be able to do work study while on exchange. Tuition rates and adjustments, you're going to be billed 15 to 18 hours. And so you have to make sure that whatever classes that you're signing up for at your exchange program is going to make sure or ensure that you retain your scholarships and your financial aid and all of those things. So you don't want to go under your credit hours. And you should sign up for more than 18 or less than 15 hours. So, and what happens if you do that? So that can take you off track for your graduation. We want to make sure that you're not losing your scholarships while you're on exchange. So you need to be mindful of how many hours, your credit hours you're taking to ensure that you're keeping your finances straight.
Awesome. Thanks, Angela. So now, most common when students think about language proficiency and learning a new language, the most common avenue to do that is typically going to be through the Global Education Office through study abroad, right? Studying in a different country. National Student Exchange does offer opportunities to travel to some U.S. territories. For example, the universities in Puerto Rico, there are about 11 that are part of the National Student Exchange, where the language of instruction oftentimes is going to be Spanish, and the spoken language of that U.S. territory is also Spanish, right? So, but there is an opportunity to gain some language proficiency when you do a semester in a different territory where the language spoken may not be English. There are also options in some of those Puerto Rico schools that may offer courses that are offered in English as the spoken language. It just depends, and there are some ways that students can determine that. But if you are interested in an exchange where where the language of instruction or the language in that specific territory is not English, then you could consider pursuing an exchange to Puerto Rico. Now, the next thing we're going to discuss is the semester versus quarter schools. So let me just say that there are a very small number of institutions in this consortium in National Student Exchange that are quarter schools, okay? Quarter schools used to be a really common thing in the Pacific Northwest, specifically in Oregon, Washington, California. What we're finding is that most schools have moved towards a semester. Semester being very parallel to what we do at the University of New Mexico, right? A fall semester, which is 16 weeks, a spring semester, which is 16 weeks, and a summer semester, which is usually 10 to 12 weeks. So for those institutions, however, that work on the quarter system, this is kind of how you would determine that. So on the campus profile, it will dictate and indicate if the campus is a quarter school. Again, the only two states that have quarter schools are in Oregon and Washington right now that are part of our consortium. So the way that this works is quarter schools, instead of having 3 semesters, they have 4 quarters. And the typical quarter ranges for about 12 weeks in duration. Now, because students are taking courses over the span of 12 weeks as opposed to 16, the pace of the material goes much faster. So instead of meeting over 16 weeks when you're meeting over 12, they condense the course material into a shorter time frame, which can be, for some students, they really enjoy it, right? But for other students, they may not like that if they aren't into the pace of the courses. So how it transfers back, because you're taking courses in such a condensed time period, more often than not, instead of taking 5 or 6 courses like we do at the University of New Mexico in a typical semester, you're typically only going to take 3 in a quarter. And the reason, again, is because it would be difficult to take 4 or 5 classes when you're having such a condensed and fast-paced learning environment, right? So, and the typical calendar looks like this. So our fall semester, it usually starts around the 20th to 25th of August, right? With a quarter school, the fall quarter usually doesn't start until late September. And then that late September course is going to get out around the exact same time that we get out for our winter break, right? So amongst the same time frame, but it's just about 10 weeks. Now, typically also, if you consider this most recent semester, UNM, we did our winter break and we went back to school on the 16th of January. Well, with a quarter school, it's very common that you would go back maybe on the 2nd or 3rd of January. You start a little bit quicker. And that's when you start the winter quarter. The winter quarter will then be about 10 to 12 weeks and we'll get out at spring break. Students have about 2 weeks off, and then those students will start what's called the spring quarter, which usually gets out, instead of in early May, it usually gets out in early June. So ultimately, if a student participates in a campus for 3 quarters, they will typically take about 9 or 10 classes. Well, if you think about the typical semester at a university, if you attend the University of New Mexico for a year, you're usually going to complete about 10 classes over 2 semesters, right? So it's the same amount of coursework typically if you go for a full year, but it's just condensed. So some more information that you can just read on this slide if it gives you a little bit of perspective. But most importantly, the credits are going to transfer back to the university as quarter semester classes. And more often the computation is about 0.67 hours per credit hour. But a typical quarter class is 5 credit hours. So that equals out to 3 here at the University of New Mexico. So most common, if students are going to go to a quarter school, they usually want to go for the full year if they can, or they'll often go for the winter and spring quarter. But you can't just go for the spring quarter because then you'd be starting randomly in the middle of the semester, and that can be difficult to plan around. So it's just an option, quarter schools versus semester schools. Almost 99% of the schools in NSE are going to be semester and parallel with us, though. So anyway, sorry for the length of explaining that. It's quarter versus semester schools. Now, if you're a student, you have up to 2 years of eligibility as a UNM student to go on exchanges. That's 4 semesters, doesn't include exchanges during the summer. You could technically go to 2 separate schools for a year apiece. You could also technically go to 4 different schools for 4 different semesters. In addition, if you've ever considered going on an exchange abroad, this doesn't prevent you from going on exchange to a foreign country. You have those 4 semesters of eligibility to do exchange programs, and you can mix and match however you wish, so long as, of course, right, keeping in mind that you want to make sure that you're maintaining progress towards your degree. You don't want to just go on vacation just for kicks, right? But you could go a year abroad, and then you could do a year of domestic exchange. You could do 4 semesters abroad. You could do 3 semesters of domestic and 1 abroad. You can dissect those 4 semesters however you wish. So just something to keep in mind. Now, how do I know if my courses are going to transfer back to the University of New Mexico? Well, if you're accepted, you go through a course equivalency process, typically with your academic advisor. This is something that we typically will highlight the process for in the outbound orientation we facilitate for all outbound students. The purpose of NSE, again, is to make sure that you're not just taking classes for the sake of going on exchange, but that you're actually making meaningful progress towards your degree. Ultimately, this is where the work comes in. It does require students to work in advance to be able to identify coursework that will come back. One of the great benefits of a national student exchange is because there are common accreditation standards amongst American colleges and universities, oftentimes the likelihood of coursework transferring back is dramatically increased. With that said, we don't like to roll the dice and take a gamble. So it's encouraged that students know before they even step foot on the other campus that they examine and determine exactly what courses they plan to take, and they get a review done to make sure that the courses will transfer back to the University of New Mexico as they expect. So it shouldn't add time to graduation, shouldn't add any extra, any surprises along the way. Couple of things that you want to be mindful of. So for example, the Anderson School of Management has a special accreditation referred to as AACSB. Well, that hoity-toity accreditation essentially means that our campus is one of the most prestigious business schools in the country, and we want to accept credits from other prestigious business schools with the same accreditation. Also, in order to maintain that accreditation, the Anderson School only accepts a maximum of 15 hours from external business programs. So that means that typically Anderson students are only going to be afforded most likely one semester on exchange, but I have seen students be able to work it out so that they could do two. But they have to mix in some free electives that are a part of their mandatory requirements for a degree, right? And again, they want to attend other business schools that have the same AACSB accreditation as we do. Otherwise, those courses won't transfer back. Some other considerations, if you're going to be a senior on exchange, is that possible? Well, absolutely it's possible, right? But as you probably know, seniors have a little less flexibility sometimes in their course curriculum because they may need specific courses to satisfy specific upper division requirements. If you're a senior that has flexibility, then a senior exchange can be great for you. If you're considering coming back to walk-in commencement, right, we just want to be mindful about planning a semester where you're going to be able to come back. Maybe their finals are offered the same week as the University of New Mexico. So you can finish your finals or take your finals early and head back and still walk at commencement if that's something important to you. Courses will typically come back as either an even match. That's a class that is an exact match for a course that's offered at the University of New Mexico, or they'll come back as an elective where we say, hey, we don't have this exact class, but it sounds like a great course within the discipline that we offer, and we will offer you credit towards a degree. But there are courses like trades type courses. For example, if you go out and you take a welding class, it's going to be difficult for you to earn credit at the University of New Mexico because we don't have a program like that. Another example was we sent a student to Sonoma State University. Sonoma is in the heart of wine country in California. The student really wanted to take a wine tasting class. And we said, cool, that's great. Just know that that course is not going to come back to the University of New Mexico as credit. But the students still wanted to take it because it was part of their experience and they decided to take the class, right? So also be mindful when you're on exchange, you don't want to take a duplicate course, right? Duplicate courses are often going to be a problem because duplicate courses will be the exact same course that you maybe already took. And those can cause problems for scholarships. So we want to take courses that will transfer back to the University of New Mexico. We want you to work with your department to identify those. And of course, avoid taking classes that are duplicates that you've already taken or courses that won't transfer back. Now, I'm going to pass it on for a moment to Angela. Angela's going to talk about this slide, and then I'll do some screen sharing where I'll bring up the National Student Exchange site. You're muted right now, Ange.
Okay, so how to apply? So you're going to go to UNM you can go through nse.org straight to the website, or you can go through to the Dean of Students office. It's on our webpage, and go to the application link. It's going to be the easiest application you've ever filled out while you're attending university. So if you have any questions filling out the application, you can always schedule an appointment with one of us, with Greg or myself. And during that meeting, you want to kind of have an idea of what you're looking for, what classes you're looking for, and a little bit about what you're wanting while you're out on exchange. So you may want to have already spoke to your advisor about which classes you're going to need during that semester that you're looking at to go on exchange. And also to remember deadlines. There's going to be quite a few different deadlines if you're part of National Student Exchange. So just remember that the application deadline for this year is March 1st, 2024 by 11:59 p.m. So we will accept late applications. However, it may affect your placement and getting placed.
This is actually the wrong application deadline.
The
application deadline is February 16th.
Apologies.
Yeah, February 16th for our campus.
February 16th.
Yep, sorry about that. February 16th. And anyway, yeah, so February 16th, folks. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen really quickly to show you the NSE.org webpage. Now, so folks can see this, that I've got a webpage open right now. Great. So here's what you're going to do. You go to NSE.org, and all of the list of different campuses that we have partnerships with through domestic exchange have a campus profile here. So what you're going to do is you're going to hover your mouse over this and click on campuses. Then what's going to pop up is this interactive map. And the interactive map, which populates, it's first going to tell you, hey, this is who your NSE coordinator is, right? But it's going to populate this campus map. Each one of these little icons represents a campus profile that is a university that we partner with at the University of New Mexico. Something's going on with my screen and it looks a little bit funny. Why is it all cut off like that? Strange. Anyway, folks, sorry about that. So let's say, for example, that you're a student who's interested in going on exchange. Along the left-hand column here, in alphabetical order by state, is every institution that we partner with. If you're more of a visual person and you kind of like the idea of a map, you can zoom in and out using features. If you're someone who says, I know I want to study by the ocean, right? Well, you could go ahead and pop over here and find campuses that are located on the ocean. If, for example, though, you wanted to search by an academic discipline, you can search in this little segment right here. You can search by the program of study that the university might offer and determine those campuses. But for the case today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use, just for fun, I'm going to use the University of Hawaii Manoa as our campus that we're going to use as a sample, okay? So what you want to consider is this is how you're going to go through a campus profile. You're going to click on the campus profile you're interested in. And of course, some of the most important information is the stuff on what we would refer to as the front cover of a magazine, right? The front cover of the magazine is all the things that might get you interested and curious about this particular campus. For example, who wouldn't want to study in Hawaii, right? What a beautiful place. Some of the things that we want to consider, we read about this campus. They're also going to show us some information about the campus demographics. So it's located in Honolulu, the size of the population there, the enrollment at the college, the language of instruction, and of course the term dates. As you'll notice, University of Hawaii has very similar term dates to our own, but they actually started a week before us this semester. So just some things to consider, not a huge deal breaker or anything. And then they're going to lay out a little bit of information about their campus, some location and helpful information. When we come down here, we're going to see some things. This is what's referred to as the probability of placement. Now, for the sake of our institution, you're going to see information about two different types of payment plans through the National Student Exchange. I'm going to go ahead and tell you what the host pay option is, and then for the sake of National Student Exchange, you can disregard it for now. Because we, as the University of New Mexico, have made a conscious decision not to participate in the host pay option. Host pay means that you're paying the other institution's tuition rate. It means that you're applying for scholarships and financial aid through their institution, and you're paying them directly. We at the University of New Mexico through National Student Exchange do not participate in the host pay concept. We only participate in home pay, which is exactly what I've described to you previously throughout this little webinar. We pay tuition to the University of New Mexico. Now, the probability of placement is directly related to this type of option. So on home pay, University of Hawaii is what's considered most competitive. There are 5 or 6 different tiers of probability of placement, and I'm going to show you what those are. So if a campus is considered open, that means that they will accept 100% of qualified applicants. The next designation is excellent. That means that the school will accept between 75 and 99% of qualified applicants. The next tier, good, that's 50 to 74%. Limited, 25 to 49%, and the most competitive schools like University of Hawaii Manoa, they accept fewer than 25% of qualified applicants. So our advice typically, if you're a student applying for National Student Exchange, you want to have at least one campus that you're considering going to that has an open probability of placement, meaning that they will accept 100% of qualified applicants. Why is that? We want you to be able to get placed through this process. And if you identify a campus as a backup school or as a first choice school that will guarantee that they'll accept you if you're qualified, then that means that we're not really like throwing away the application fee, right? It gives you the best chance to get placed. So we want you to have the best chance to get placed because some schools like Hawaii are really competitive and hard to get into, right? So the most important information down here, though, is this is where the rubber really meets the road in these 5 tabs. So in order of priority or preference or importance, academics is the most important and is listed first, right? So we first want to review and consider if there are any closed programs or limitations which may impact our specific ability to enroll in classes there. So for example, if I was a psychology student and I saw that psychology was listed as a closed program, that could be a problem for me, right? I may not be able to take classes within the psychology program. So that might be a deal breaker, and I'd say this isn't a good fit for me. But then there are also campuses, for example, it says psychology is a limited program. Well, some schools, just like the University of New Mexico, there are certain courses and certain disciplines that just fill up a little bit faster based on demand, based on some of the things that we know to be true when registering for classes. If you see a campus limitation, it doesn't mean that you absolutely won't be able to take any classes in that program, but you want to read carefully and make sure that you don't see any red flags that may impact your ability to register. So for example, hey, remember what I was saying about business programs? They happen to be an AACSB accredited business program. So they say they only accept students whose home campus is AACSB accredited, right? Not all campuses are going to openly advertise that, but this is a great campus profile and they give you a lot of detail. So we're going to read all this information carefully. Then they're going to list things like notable academic programs, unique programs, for example, great oceanography, great Minoan language and Hawaiian studies at Hawaii. But the thing that we really want to look at is undergraduate majors open to NSE students. We click here to expand. And in general, if we see that our major is offered at this campus, that gives us a lot of confidence that you're going to be able to take classes within that chosen discipline and therefore take meaningful classes that will contribute towards degree completion. So after I've looked through the academic tabs, notice before I was saying something about qualified applicants. Well, what makes a qualified applicant? On this page, they're going to highlight all of the information about qualified applicants. So for example, if they'll accept international students, if this is a single term or full year exchange only, if there are any other general requirements that are higher than our own 2.5 GPA. For example, they say, hey, for business courses, students have to have a 3.0. So if you don't have a 3.0, then you aren't a qualified applicant for the business program, right? We just want to make sure that we read the conditions to ensure that we meet all of the conditions of the host school that we're considering. The next tab is called Tuition and Finances. Now remember, what we said multiple times, if you're a home pay student, right, then no tuition or fees are paid to your host campus, right? That's very important. However, every campus may have some miscellaneous costs, as Angela described at the beginning of this, that they require students to pay. That's going to be subject depending on the campus that you're going to. Some campuses under this section are going to list nothing. They're going to have no additional cost that you pay for, right? But some campuses are going to have a couple of fees that they're requiring National Student Exchange students to pay for. Their responsibility is to let you know in advance what those costs are so that you're not surprised. The fees that we're interested in are the ones that say home payment and the ones that say mandatory. So for example, if you're going to go to this campus, just to get put in the computer system there, they charge you a $70 admission fee that you pay directly to the other college. In addition, if you're going to go there, in order to keep their NSE program afloat, they charge an NSE program fee of $85. So that's another cost that you pay directly to the campus, home pay and mandatory. Now, if you were living on campus, they have a mandatory housing deposit. That's $400 that you have to pay to them. Now, I doubt a student is going to take a car to Hawaii, right? But if you were taking a car to your desired campus, they may list the cost of a parking fee, just like we have. There's no such thing as free parking. And then they have a housing application fee, and they may have some course fees that depend. So these are not outrageous costs that are much higher than the University of New Mexico, but these are costs that you would incur in addition to what you're paying to the University of New Mexico, right? So we just want to make sure that the campus we're considering is a good academic fit, but also a good financial fit for us. The final thing that you want to consider is you want to look at what the cost of living is in the place where you're going. So for example, if you're going on National Student Exchange, unfortunately, you don't get to pay the Albuquerque price to go live in Honolulu, Hawaii. The cost of living in Honolulu is a little bit higher. But so that you can identify if this is an affordable exchange option for you, the NSE campus does post some approximate costs that can help you to estimate the cost of living there. So for example, if you were living in on-campus housing, the cost of their residence halls is about $4,000 for the semester. That's actually not outrageous, right? $4,000 for the semester isn't crazy. It is a little bit more expensive than ours. So for example, I think on average, you're probably paying about $2,800 to $2,900 in the residence halls at UNM. So this is more expensive. And you would have to be expecting that because you're living in Hawaii, the cost of living would go up. But let's look at this off-campus cost, right? Gosh, that's almost $700 or $800 more per month than you would expect to pay off campus here. And that doesn't surprise me. I will say that for Hawaii students, many times, if they can't live in the residence halls, most students cannot afford to live in Honolulu because it's such an expensive place. Also here, we're going to look for things like, is meal plan purchase required for on-campus living? At this university, it is. They're going to advertise that and tell you. And we typically say you add about $2,000 for the cost. So in addition, if it says on-campus housing per semester, if it says that on-campus housing is required, then you are required to live in the residence halls. If it says on-campus housing is encouraged, that just means that in their experience, exchange students living in the halls do really well. If it says nothing like this campus, then you get to choose on or off campus. Finally, here's some links to some helpful resources and tips that students can use. For example, if you're trying to determine if a campus is a good cultural fit for you, perhaps you're an undocumented student or you're a student who identifies as LGBTQ. You want to know if they have a resource center there, what resources exist. You can click on these links to identify if that campus can meet your needs. And finally, health insurance. Some campuses require students to hold health insurance. If you are not insured through another provider or through your folks or through work or something like that, they may provide health insurance as an option. At this institution, health insurance is listed as optional, is not a requirement for home pay students. So that's just something that we want to consider as we're reviewing the campus profile. Oopsie daisies. Now, getting on to the next things. So we talked about the application. The application is available 100% online. The NSE application is located right here. If you click on the Apply Now button, it will ask that you enter your UNM campus email address, and you will be directed to the appropriate University of New Mexico application. Okay, so important that you go and click on this button, the Apply Now, to be able to get to your application and enter your school email address. Okay. Again, so our application fee is typically about $150 that goes to us, or excuse me, $150 goes directly to the National Student Exchange, and then we keep $50 here for the University of New Mexico. Right now, that $200 application fee is the cost, but the application fee may go up in the future depending on what the needs of our campus are to continue to sustain our program. But for this application cycle, it is currently $200. So late applications can be accepted, but they do hurt your chances of placement. And applications can be turned into the Dean of Students office directly to our office. So you can actually complete the application 100% online. That is our preferred method, is that you submit the application directly through the NSE.org website. Now, I'm going to hand it over to Angela to talk a little bit about what you can do to be successful at your host campus. And I'll let her go ahead and touch on that.
Thanks, Greg. So host campus requirements, what you can do to be successful, right, is make sure that before you leave your home campus that all your bills are paid, so that you're not facing consequences while you're out on exchange. You want to make sure that your host campus have live-in meal plan. If there's a requirement, you have to live on campus, even if you have family there, it may be a cost that you may have to pay. There's no exceptions unless you get it in writing from somebody who can grant exception, that you do not have to live or eat there. These are all extra costs that you may or may not want to have to incur. And then you want to ensure that you're following all your university policies. When you go on an exchange, you can't have any outstanding conduct or anything hanging over your head in that kind of way. And make sure that you're taking up to at least 12 hours, and remember your scholarships to ensure that you're not losing your scholarships. If you have to have 15 credit hours, 18 credit hours, whatever the case may be, that could be detrimental to your exchange. And then when you're looking for a host campus, want to make sure that the program that you're looking for isn't closed or that it's not limited, so that you're able to find courses to make sure that you're staying on track for your graduation and for your program of study. Just want to pay extra attention to that.
So on this question, am I guaranteed placement? So technically, we give students tips to maximize their probability of getting placed, okay? Unfortunately, though, you're not guaranteed. So for example, I just went through that campus profile for the University of Hawaii Manoa. Hawaii Manoa is a very competitive school. On average, they accept about 10% of qualified applicants. So it would be dishonest for us to say, hey, if you put University of Hawaii Manoa on your application, you're going to get placed there and that's where you're going to end up. What we suggest instead is if you want to take a shot at University of Hawaii Manoa, feel free to do that. But you need to have at least one school on your list. You can list up to 5. And you want to list at least one campus that has an open or excellent probability of placement. This is what gives us the maximized opportunity to get placed so that we're not disappointed, so that we're not just throwing away our application fee, but we have a reliable option. So other things that go into getting a good placement or having the best chance to be placed is just make sure you turn in the application by the approved deadline. You write a good letter of interest, right? We review a letter of interest typically if we need to make a tiebreaker decision about placing one student over another. In general, it ensures that we know a little bit about the students, and it also ensures that we can give an authentic way of being able to rank our student applicants in the most ethical way possible. Because unfortunately, we can't just use something like GPA always, because for example, if you've got a 4.0 in chemical engineering, that's a pretty incredible feat, right? And then there are certain majors at the University of New Mexico that are still difficult, but may not be as difficult as chemical engineering, perhaps, right? So a GPA is a good relator, but it doesn't tell the full story of an applicant, and we like to consider some other factors. So here's some things to keep in mind. Your grades do not transfer back to the University of New Mexico, only the credits do. A UNM GPA is comprised of coursework taken at the University of New Mexico. So even though you can take credits at another campus and they can come back to the University of New Mexico and go towards your degree requirements, your UNM GPA will be unaffected by the coursework that you attempt to transfer back to the University of New Mexico. So what I'm not saying is this is a free and clear opportunity for you to blow off the semester and just get the minimal coursework required and the minimal GPA required to pass your classes. What I'm saying is you can have some flexibility in getting the coursework to still transfer back. But keep in mind, while you're on exchange, you still need to fulfill the requirements for a scholarship. So if your scholarship requires you to keep a 3.0 while you're taking courses, you still need to do that while on exchange. If a scholarship requires you to take 15 credit hours, you still need to complete 15 credit hours that will transfer back to UNM. It's not a free out to be able to just take whatever coursework you want. You can use your time, you cannot use your time on exchange to establish residency at your host campus. You're not going to become a Californian after doing a semester and a half or 2 semesters while on exchange. Angela mentioned this at the beginning. The only form of financial aid that does not work while you're on exchange is work study. Work study is awarded in the state in which you are attending college. And since you're completing your FAFSA and your financial aid is being awarded through New Mexico, the University of New Mexico, you can't access it from a different state other than New Mexico, because work has to be completed in order to access work study, and you can't really do that when you're in a different state. But that's the only exception, and work study is the only exception where financial aid won't work the same way. Make sure you can get your courses approved for transferring them back to the University of New Mexico. The onus is on you to do this, but it's incredibly important to do the work up front so that you're not taking any guesses or taking any chances at the coursework coming back. We want no surprises. We want to know that the coursework will come back. So, and also remember to turn in your application by that February 16th priority deadline. The way the placements work, so on between March 3rd and March 7th, the National Student Exchange comes together in an online platform where we will try and place you to your first choice school first. So that means whatever your first choice is, we're going to try and get you placed at that school. If we're successful, it doesn't matter what your second, third, fourth, and fifth choices were. You'll be placed based on that. So if we're successful, the process is over. You get one placement that you get to enjoy, and it was your first choice. But let's say that you were not successful in getting your first choice. We will then attempt to place you to your second choice school, and then your third and your fourth, until ultimately we get a placement. So this is why we want every applicant to have at least one school on their list that has an open or excellent probability of placement, to give you an insured placement in case you're trying for a more competitive school, so you're not disappointed and left holding an empty bag with no opportunity for exchange. Some schools are going to close after the first placement round because some schools fill up on the first try. For example, if you want University of Hawaii, you're going to have to put that as a first choice school to get it, right? If you do not get accepted to any of the schools that you put down, you remain eligible for what's called direct placements. We can still find, there's usually about 120 to 140 schools that remain open. And as long as you've got some flexibility, you can identify another program at another college that we can still place you at. So just keep that in mind. After you've been placed, we typically are going to host an outbound orientation where we allow students to learn all about the ins and outs of fulfilling their exchange. Anything from planning with the host campus and what to expect, the course equivalency process and how you can pursue that with your academic departments of your choosing, and ultimately just how to start preparing for the exchange. So we are not able to do your course equivalencies entirely for you on our own, right? You do have to pursue those. We encourage you strongly to still pursue those as much as possible so that you can ensure that you're going to have a successful exchange and a successful transfer of coursework back. But you're not required to do it because we can't require you to do something, right? It's on you to be able to be as prepared as possible, but we'll try and show you the tools and tricks to be able to do it. So finally, that concludes our presentation. Angela and I are the current NSE coordinators for the University of New Mexico campus. In time, our program will be transitioning. It'll be transitioning to the Global Education Office at the University of New Mexico through Study Abroad. Study Abroad has been doing exchange programs for years and years, and the program is in good hands. As the program starts to transition to Study Abroad, we'll still be available to try and answer questions and still be available to assist students where we can. Our contact information is right here. We will be your coordinators for the time being to help you with the placement process. Now, that concludes the presentation. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording and we'll take a moment to answer any questions that you guys might have.